Well, whichever one we seek out, it has to be one that's survivable with whatever your current society is. It must not be a threat to that society. And I find the Jesus story is particularly interesting in that regard. It's so much not a threat to society that it's been misappropriately used to support society for thousands of years now, a couple of thousand years. If you look at it afresh, anew, in some sense, coming from this objectivity of the material world and secularity, it has some very appealing qualities, apart from not being threatening to the state itself, I mean. Which is very important if the state has power to overrule such. But the Jesus story says that your real life is a spiritual life, meaning, and, if you like, heartfelt needs, which are not necessarily material. Can be. I mean, we all want health, and we want the opportunity of living. In some sense, we want the freedom of being able to live and create what we feel to be of value. But the story steers what we feel to be of value. And they are the things like, obviously, love, compassion, joy, peace, hope, meaning to life, creativity, wisdom, understanding. Hope. Did I mention hope? Should do, it's my surname. Order and predictability, security, peace in that sense. Perhaps something to do with justice, truth, wisdom. Many things, all of which are in some sense important to the individual, of major importance. I mean, where are you without wisdom? Where are you without hope? There's no life, no reason to do anything. Where are you without love? Desperate, alone, unsupported. Where are you without faithfulness, integrity, something you can rely on? These things are major to you. And not by any means necessarily enemies of the state. You know, as Paul puts it, against such there is no law. There's no law against your kindness. Well, unless the state is vilifying a particular sector of society, like fascism did with Jewish people, or communism might do with perceived enemies of the state. Well, any state might do with its perceived enemies, of course, vilify them, whether those enemies are internal or external. But compassion, kindness, understanding, wisdom, peace, hope, joy, these things don't, in large measure, threaten the state. In fact, they're very necessary for the state to continue to exist and function. You could say are always in danger of being seized and controlled and manipulated by this, or used by the state to manipulate its people. Well, yes, that's true. But they're still most important and valuable in themselves, aren't they? So the Jesus story comes into its own, I think. and you may find it comes into its own sufficiently for you, or better than other views that you've looked at. Or perhaps you don't look at the Jesus story view because society has lost it under a heap of its historicity about Christianity and religion in the past. And as I say, thrown out the baby with the bathwater. But the underlying story is most appealing. Underlying story is a kind man called Jesus who tells you that God loves you. Goes around rescuing people into abundant life, life eternal. Well, that's a nice story. Fantasy, you might think, but a very good story. Perhaps it enshrines something of great value to us, something that can come to our rescue without endangering the state. In other words, I've not come to change the world. Oh, but surely all that I value is in the world. No, says the Christian story, the Jesus story anyway, not the Christian story. The Jesus story says no. Life abundant is something to do with knowing God. Knowing God, what's that got to do with it? You might say, coming from a secular world. Oh, it's just make-believe. Yes. A very good make-believe. Different to the make-believe doctrine that you've been absorbing, but not a threat to it. But one of a relationship to a God that loves and cares, not just for you, but for all. Oh, sounds a bit utopian. It is. Taste and see. What's it turn on? Trusting in this God. How? Why? Why would you want to? Oh, preoccupation with the things that you value. All that's good in your life. Well, we don't do that. We look at all that's bad in our life. I mean, look at the news. It's not a long list of wonderful things that are happening in the world. Even in the communist state, it's not that. It's telling you everything that's wrong with the enemies of the state, who may be some of our citizens, which we have to vilify and dismember if we can. Oh, I hope I'm not in that category, you might think. And you're kept in order accordingly, of course. Well, that's a sort of naked degeneration of the state, but all states have it to some extent. Just not so blatant, I think. But the Jesus story is not that I've come to change the world. I've come to give you life. I'm not even come to bring peace on the world. I'm not come to bring change on earth. Those that have ears to hear, let them hear. I'm not out to convince and harvest the rest. Oh, isn't that an enemy of the state? Not necessarily, no. You know, the love is extended to all. All is seen as needing this life abundant. But in the Jesus story, well, an all-powerful God that loves all that he's created is an incredible message of hope for all, not just your downtrodden poor, but your mistreated middle class perhaps, and your desperate elites that find life is not lovely despite their position in society. You know, I used to see people envy my mum and dad, but I knew the story of it, the reality, how they made each other's life a misery through their lack of love and care and kindness and mistreatment of each other. They made life a hell for themselves. They were not to be envied. Some of the poorer people that lived in the same street had much better relationships, far, far better relationships than my parents had with each other. And I, as a 11, 12-year-old, realised it. Wow. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.